Okay, good afternoon and thank you for joining us for today's lecture recital, which is required for the doctoral degree in orchestral conducting. I am Lorena Suarez and today I will discuss the musical nationalism of Gerardo Guevara through an analysis of some of his most representative works. Buenas tardes y gracias por acompañarnos hoy en esta conferencia recital requerida para el doctorado en dirección de orquesta. Soy Lorena Suárez y hablaré sobre el nacionalismo musical de Gerardo Guevara a través de un análisis de algunas de sus obras más representativas. Gerardo Guevara is an Ecuadorian composer, pianist, and conductor who became known as one of Ecuador's main composers in the last century. His compositional style, characterized by the fusion of traditional Ecuadorian music with European and avant-garde elements, constitutes his musical contribution that continues to shape Ecuador's heritage. Although no extensive in number, Guevara's orchestral compositions represent vast creativity and have become an integral part of Ecuadorian symphonic repertoire. Guevara's musical journey has been a search for his identity and roots. Is it too loud? Okay. Guevara's musical journey has been a search for his identity and roots. Guevara has expressed a desire to be remembered as a nationalistic composer and a proud Ecuadorian musician who is deeply rooted in his homeland's territory, history, and musical heritage. In this lecture recital, I seek to unravel the intricacies of Gerardo Guevara's compositions by analyzing his orchestral suite Ecuador, the Divertimento No. 1 for strings, and the Pasillo, espantapájaros. By doing so, I intend to document his contributions to the nationalistic repertoire of Ecuador. Composer Gerardo Guevara Viteri was born on September 23, 1930, in Quito, Ecuador. He embarked on a musical journey at an early age. He started his formal music education with studies in oboe and piano at the National Conservatory of Music in Quito. Growing up, Guevara's connection to this institution was deeply rooted, given that his parents served as custodians of the conservatory, and the family also resided within its walls. Consequently, Guevara grew up immersed in a rich musical environment. In 1959, Guevara was granted a UNESCO scholarship, leading him to Paris, where he resided for 12 years. Guided by the renowned pedagogue Nadia Boulanger, he embarked on an exploration for his musical identity. As she did with different artistic sensibilities. In this suite, Guevara uses dissonance to represent periods of visual arts through music. In the final movement, aptly titled Nuevas Formas, or New Shapes, Guevara integrates several modern techniques to craft a soundscape of experimentation. These techniques include special effects for the percussion instruments, artificial harmonics for the strings, and unconventional ways of playing keyboard instruments. Guevara's cantata Eloy al Faro was premiered on July 13, 2012 by the Guayaquil Symphony Orchestra. Eloy al Faro stands as a vivid portrait of the life of the figure known as El Viejo Luchador, the old fighter. Eloy al Faro's significance in Ecuadorian history is seen in his 2 terms as president of the country and because he was a central figure of the Liberal Party, who left a lasting impact on the nation's political landscape. This 7-movement cantata offers a journey through the politician's life, illuminating critical moments and ideological struggles. Guevara's composition culminates in a climactic finale, where the resounding choir or chorus magnifies the essence of freedom, an ideal championed by Alfaro. Guevara's contribution to vocal and choral music is extensive. He uses poetic works of prominent Ecuadorian writers, such as Medardo Ángel Silva, Jorge Enrique Adún, Jorge Carrera Andrade, and Ana Maria Isa in his vocal works and compositions. Besides using texts in Spanish, Guevara also incorporates Quechua texts into his music, showcasing rich cultural influences. An illustration of these fusions is found in his most renowned choral work, which was composed in 1958. The Yungo, titled Abamuy Shumbo, or The Giving of the Heart, utilizes an Ecuadorian traditional rhythm. Among other influential works in Guevara's catalog is the ballet Yaguar Shumbo, composed in Guayaquil in 1958. This piece, composed for orchestra, choir, and narrators, features texts penned by celebrated Ecuadorian poets such as Carrera Andrade, Adún, and Alejandro Velasco. His cantata Canto Bolívar, set to a poem by Chilean poet Pablo Neruda, features baritone, choir, orchestra, and it employs quartal harmony. The Mestizo Mestizo from 1994 presents an orchestral journey divided into 3 movements: Baile Mestizo, or mixed dance, Ejercicio Barroco, or Baroque exercise, and Collages Siglo XX, or 20th century collages. Among his recent pentatonic compositions, the Concerto for Violin and Orchestra from 2019 stands out, incorporating an ambient genre called Yarori. Ecuadorian traditional genres play a significant role in both popular and academic music, and the primary genres and dance forms that feature prominently in the works of Gerardo Guevara include the San Juanito, the Yarví, Danzante, Yumbo, Albazo, Pasillo, and others. I will now explore some of the genres that particularly influenced Guevara's compositions. The San Juanito, a mestizo genre originating from the Andean region, is particularly significant. Its roots trace back to the town of Otavalo in the Ecuadorian province of Imbabura. This lively dance is typically written in 2/4 time and maintains a fast tempo. The structure of the San Juanito generally consists of a brief introduction followed by 2 short sections, A and B, often repeated throughout the piece. One example of Guevara's use of the San Juanito can be found in the first movement of Divertimento No. 1 for strings. Following a 14-measure introduction, the movement presents a free fugue based on the characteristic rhythm compound binary meter, or 6/8 time, and employs a minor pentatonic scale. The second type, which he terms a Creole Yarabi, is written in ternary meter and features both the minor scale and chromaticism. Ornamentation is a key characteristic of the Yarabi, adding expressivity and nuance to its somber character. Guevara's incorporation of an indigenous Yarabi can be heard in the second movement of his Divertimento No. 1 for strings. Beginning at measure 14, the movement introduces a forward passage that captures the Yarabi's characteristic mournful quality. This is followed by the main theme introduced by the first violinist. Then, at measure 30, the second violins and the violas harmonize this theme. From measure 42, we will listen to this Yarabi, beginning with a solo violin adorned with various ornamentations. This is later joined by all the first violins, leading to the conclusion of the movement. Which Guevara convened, he highlighted that the primary genres of Ecuadorian music, he said that they were the danzante and the yum, both pre-Hispanic genres that are set in 6/8 time, but they differ in their internal rhythmic structure. The danzante is characterized by its slower tempo and a distinctive trochaic rhythm, one long or stressed syllable followed by one short or unstressed syllable. In contrast, the yumbo is typically faster in tempo and features a iambic rhythm, so one short syllable followed by one long syllable. This rhythmic pattern, which resembles the natural pulse of human heartbeat, evolved from both Andean and Amazonian musical traditions. Historically, the yumbo rhythm symbolized the heartbeat of warriors preparing for battle, conveying a sense of urgency and bravery. In the final section of the third movement of Guevara's Divertimento No. 1, the composer uses a yumbo rhythm to portray the transformation of the farmer into a warrior, preparing to defend his family and his land. We will now listen to a musical example 4. The albazo is another distinctive genre featured in Guevara's compositions. The term albazo is derived from alba, meaning dawn, reflecting its traditional role in the Andean region, where wind bands would herald the arrival of religious festivities at daybreak with lively, upbeat melodies. This genre is celebrated for its fusion of Inca and Spanish influences, earning it the label of ritmo mestizo. Rooted in the Biography tradition, the albazo stands out for its celebratory and festive character. Typically written in 6/8 time, the albazo is fast-paced and exuberant, even when it is composed in a minor. The genre also is known for alternating between 6/8 time were unified as a single nation. The Pasillo represents a fusion of the European waltz and local musical traditions. Typically written in 3/4 time and often set in minor keys, the Pasillo is distinguished by its melancholic melodies. The lyrical content of Pasillos is also significant, often conveying deeply emotional themes. Its characteristic rhythm pattern is as follows. One of Guevara's most iconic pasillos is his 1955 composition, El espantapájaros, the Scarecrow. Originally written for piano solo in the key of E minor and lasting almost 4 minutes, the piece unfolds in a structure that begins with a nostalgic introduction, followed by a lively allegretto in the A section. This leads into a contrasting lyrical moderato B section, which is followed by a somber and closing section. The entire structure is repeated, culminating additional instruments, creating a distinctive sound world. Additionally, many of these pieces vividly evoke his homeland's landscapes and cultural narratives, offering a musical reflection of his personal and cultural identity. The orchestral suite Ecuador is a key work in Guevara's catalog and serves as a focal point of this research. In this piece, Guevara highlights nationalistic traits by blending a variety of elements: indigenous ancestral practices, aspects of colonial influence, and expressions of Ecuadorian musical identity. This suite was composed between 1973 and 1974. Guevara conducted the premiere in 1974 with the National Symphony Orchestra of Ecuador. In its 4 movements, the composer captured 4 pivotal stages in the historical narrative of modern Ecuador territory. Each movement features a unique ensemble, and Guevara progressively introduces additional performing forces throughout the work. The suite was written for a full symphonic orchestra, and the instrumentation comprises a piccolo, 2 flutes, 1 pingullo, which is an Andean flute crafted from cane, 2 oboes, 2 clarinets, 2 bassoons, 4 horns, 2 trumpets, 3 trombones, tuba, timpani, an array of percussion instruments including the claves, the maracas, the snare, coconut shells, cymbals, bass drum for the bombo, woodblocks, and strings. Guevara was inspired by the poetry of Adum, whose text he encountered during his Parisian years. The complete work spans approximately 17 minutes, offering a journey through Ecuador's historical and cultural landscape. The titles of the 4 movements of the suite are 1. Sol, Tierra y Hombre, Sun, Earth, and Man. 2. De Vitimare a Colonizado, from Vitimare to colonize. 3. Mestizaje, or of mixed race. 4. Siglo XX, 20th century. We will now explore each movement of the suite. The first movement, titled Sol, Tierra y Hombre, draws inspiration from Jorge Enrique Adorno's poem Historia, or History. The opening stanza sets a mood of stillness and desolation, which I will read first in Spanish, then in translation. Historia. Al comienzo la patria fue una gran página en blanco. La arena, el mar, la superficie, la sombra verde. La tinta con que manchó el invierno la sabana. Pero de pronto, sin que nada pudiera detenerlo, hay un hombre conduciendo a su familia por los márgenes. Entra, cae y escala hasta el renglón equinoccial de su vida, buscando su vida. History. At the beginning, the homeland was a big blank page. The sand, the sea, the surface, the green shadow, the ink with which winter stained the savanna. But suddenly, without anything that could stop him, there is a man leading his family on the margins, enters, falls, climbs to the equinox looking for life. The music mirrors the poem's sense of vast emptiness and the gradual arrival of life. The opening atmosphere is steeped in desolation, underscored by a profound sense of spaciousness and freedom, conveyed through the sustained improvisatory string notes. The introduction, spanning measures 1 to 39, features pentatonic scales reminiscent of Andean musical tradition. evoking the poem's imagery of untamed, open landscape, where nature's elements remain untouched. The score shows the use of the C pentatonic scale and clusters, the double basses improvise on open strings, employing techniques such as colegio, saltellato, and bowing behind the bridge, producing unique sonic and timbral effects. At measure 26, the piccolo introduces a distinctive pentatonic melody, characterized by long sustained notes with ornamentation. This is accompanied by sparse percussion and a contrapuntal line in the flutes, which utilizes a dissonant pentatonic scale, further enhancing the movement's sense of fragmented space and time. The stillness is soon disrupted, the shift from emptiness to vibrant life. This marks the beginning of the first theme, which likely represents humanity's emergence in the vast land. Guevara introduces the yumbo rhythm at measure 40, an important element of Ecuadorian musical heritage. This section begins with a pentatonic fugue where each subject enters a perfect fifth above the previous one, facilitating modulations from one pentatonic scale to the other. As the movement progresses, it evolves to various tonal centers, maintaining the euphorhythmic pattern throughout. The melody alternates between 6/8 and 3/4 time, reflecting the dynamic tension between stability and motion. In the timpani, in the final section of the movement, the percussion becomes more prominent, with the timpani playing a quasi-melodic line, adding weight and intensity to the transformation from stillness to movement. The second movement, the Mitimaya Colonizado, considers historical narratives shaped by Inca invasions. These invasions were characterized by relocating families or entire communities, known as Mitimayas, to different territories as a strategy to mitigate internal conflicts. Drawing on the somber and introspective nature of Inca culture, the movement is inspired in the Yaraví, an Andean musical genre. It opens with a B-flat pentatonic theme played by the piccolo, which is juxtaposed by a contrapuntal line in the clarinet, using a G-flat pentatonic scale. The music evolves gradually, becoming harmonically complex as it progresses. From measure 13 to 17, a B-flat pentatonic theme is harmonized with major seconds, leading this into a dissonant six-measure phrase that culminates in a G-flat augmented chord. This chord's root, enharmonic to F-sharp, ushers into a new section starting at measure 23. From measure 23 to 44, the music makes extensive use of melodic chords. In measure 55 to 65, a non-diatonic chord progression emerges with the timpani reinforcing the tonal shifts. of the albazo genre. It begins with an F minor and a solitary oboe solo, offering the composer's rendition of an Andean melody. This theme is later echoed by other woodwinds from measure 8 to 31, expanding upon the initial idea. At measure 87, the influence of Spanish music becomes more apparent. Guevara specifically credits Spain's musical impact to the introduction of the guitar into Hispanic American cultures, which catalyzed a transformative shift in musical expressions. Here, the upper strings evoke the resonant qualities of guitar chords, while the cellos and basses sustain a G minor line. The fourth and final movement, titled Siglo XX, serves as a portrait of tumultuous life in the 20th century. It is characterized by its inherent unpredictability and stark contrasts, and also moments of violence. Straying from traditional conventions of musical genres and chord progressions, the movement is instead dominated by textural intricacies and the evocation of diverse sonorities throughout the different sections. The movement feels mostly improvisational, although it is fully notated. Percussion instruments play a crucial role throughout the movement, cultivating a frenetic atmosphere that underscores the chaos of the era. The final section, starting at measure 49, introduces dissonance through the use of major second intervals. These intervals gradually accumulate, building to a climax where the full orchestra joins together in a dense dissonance texture. We will now perform the suite Ecuador by Gerardo Guevara. In conclusion, while some scholarly attention has been given to Gerardo Guevara's solo's works and vocal compositions, his orchestral music, particularly his suite, Ecuador, remains largely unexplored by scholars. The absence of commercial available recordings, scores, and parts for this and for many of his compositions only further contributes to this gap in research and performance. In this study, I seek to fill that void by analyzing Guevara's orchestral contributions, shedding light on how his unique fusion of indigenous Ecuadorian musical traditions with European and avant-garde elements establishes him as one of the leading figures of Ecuadorian nationalism in music.
Throughout works like this suite, Guevara's compositional style not only reflects his country's complex cultural identity, but also solidifies his lasting impact on the nation's musical heritage. The lack of accessible orchestral material by Ecuadorian composers, coupled with limited scholarly resources on Guevara's music, present significant challenges for performers, scholars, and critics. While biographical works and a handful of analytical essays and some online interviews provide insights into Guevara's life and career, the scarcity of published scores remain a major impediment on a deeper understanding and broader performance of his music. Despite these challenges, Guevara's position as a key figure in Ecuadorian music is undeniable, and this research hopes to inspire further exploration and engagement with his orchestral works, ensuring that his legacy continues to resonate both within Ecuador and the global music community.